He starts explaining himself before anyone even asks. And in that exact moment, something changes. Not because his explanation is bad, not because he is wrong, but because the act of explaining has already placed him lower. Most people believe explanations create clarity. In reality, they often create exposure, and exposure shifts power. The room is calm, neutral, professional, a long table, soft lighting, documents neatly aligned, no tension on the surface. He presents his proposal clearly, every detail prepared, every variable considered. When he finishes, there is a pause, a short one, nothing uncomfortable, and yet he speaks again. He clarifies a point no one questioned, then another. Then he explains why he chose this approach, why the timing is right, why the risks are manageable. No one interrupts him, no one challenges him. Still, he keeps talking. Inside his mind, it feels responsible. If I explain everything, there will be no doubt. If I remove ambiguity, they will understand. What he doesn't realize is that something else is happening. Across the table, posture shifts. One person leans back slightly, another stops writing. Someone glances sideways, briefly, nothing dramatic. But attention is no longer where it was. The more he explains, the more he reveals something he never intended to show. Not information, but state, urgency, need, a subtle desire to be accepted. He can't see it, but they can. Because explanations are not neutral, they are signals. There is a pattern that appears across cultures, hierarchies, and environments of power. The person who explains without being asked is often the person who feels the need to justify. And justification suggests vulnerability. In many Asian negotiation and business cultures, this is understood instinctively. Silence is not awkward. Brevity is not weakness. Explaining too much is often read as uncertainty, not because the explanation lacks logic, but because the need to explain is visible. He wasn't always aware of this. Earlier in his career, he believed competence was proven verbally. He spoke fast, covered every angle, anticipated every objection before it existed. He thought this made him look prepared. But outcomes told a different story. Decisions stalled, anticipated every objection before it existed. He thought this made him look prepared, but outcomes told a different story. Decisions stalled. Authority was questioned. His ideas were picked apart more than others. Then one day he watched someone else. Same room, same structure, same stakes. That person presented their idea calmly, then stopped. When questions came, they answered only what was asked. Nothing more, no justification, no extra context, no defense. And something strange happened. No one doubted them. No one pressed aggressively. The room adjusted to them. Not the other way around. Most people explain because silence feels dangerous. Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty triggers fear. So we talk, we fill gaps, we preempt criticism, we try to control perception. Explaining feels like protection, but psychologically it often does the opposite. Because the moment you explain without resistance, you're no longer responding, you are defending, and defense implies threat, even if none existed. This mechanism becomes obvious in interrogations and high-pressure interviews. A simple question is asked. The subject answers. Silence follows. The subject starts explaining more, adding context, justifying decisions, correcting misunderstandings that were never expressed. The interrogator says nothing, because silence applies pressure without force. And the more the subject explains, the more internal conflict leaks out. Not because they are lying, but because over-explaining exposes insecurity. Silence lets people reveal themselves. Words accelerate it. Back in the room, he finally stops talking. The silence returns. Now it feels different. He senses it. He has said too much. Not because the content was wrong, but because the balance has shifted. Now the questions come, not neutral ones, sharper ones. Requests for clarification that wouldn't have existed otherwise. Because by explaining too much, he showed exactly where to push. Across many hierarchical systems, there is an unspoken rule. High-status individuals rarely explain themselves, not because they are arrogant, but because their position does not require constant justification. They speak, they wait. Others adjust. Explaining too much signals the opposite. It says, I need you to understand me. I need agreement. I need validation. And need is always visible. He remembers how difficult it was to stop doing this, the urge to clarify, to soften statements, to make sure no one misinterprets. It felt responsible, but it was driven by fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being judged, fear of losing control. What he didn't realize then was that control was already gone the moment he started explaining without resistance. In many traditional Asian teaching environments, masters rarely over-explain. Instructions are minimal, demonstrations are brief, then silence. Students repeat the movement, again and again. The teacher does not rescue them with words, because explanation too early removes awareness. The same applies to power. When you explain too much, you remove the other person's responsibility to think. Silence forces engagement. Years later, he returns to a similar room, similar stakes, different approach. He presents his idea, then stops. The pause appears. He lets it exist. A question comes. He answers it directly, briefly, nothing more. Another pause. Someone else speaks. The room feels calmer, more focused. He's no longer managing perception. He's letting others project, and projection often works in your favor. The weakness is not explanation itself. The weakness is unnecessary explanation. Explaining when no resistance exists. Clarifying before confusion appears. Justifying before being challenged. Each one reveals doubt. Confidence does not rush to explain. Confidence waits. This applies far beyond rooms like this. Arguments, relationships, everyday interactions. The person who explains first often gives up leverage. The person who waits forces the other side to reveal intent. Silence is not withdrawal, it is positioning. Most people cannot tolerate being misunderstood. They rush to correct narratives. But power does not come from controlling every interpretation. It comes from controlling your response. Let others sit with ambiguity. Those who matter will ask. Those who don't do not need convincing. He leaves the room. Nothing dramatic happened. No confrontation, no speeches, no applause. But the outcome is different. Decisions move faster. Resistance decreases. Respect increases. Not because he spoke better, but because he spoke less. Explaining feels productive. Silence feels risky. But power often lives where discomfort begins. The lesson is not to never explain. The lesson is restraint. Speak when there is resistance, not when there is none. Because every unnecessary explanation is information you didn't need to give, and those who learn this rarely feel the need to convince again.